Okay. So, yeah, what I want you to do is get me in the thing, watch where the buttons are, because what, to me, kind of feels normal is this with my hands.
Okay.
Keep going around until you get over, kind of over my left shoulder a little bit.
I got a good view from the other. That's not a very good view there.
But this one, actually that view shows these two hands are overlapped this way.
No, this view does.
Okay, either way, it shows that they're...
This view.
Right. But my perception from this is that these are the same correct normal distance from each other. Okay? Getting like this where it's even...
Right.
Feels odd to me.
Yeah.
I sense it as being odd. My perception of it is that it's odd. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go like this, that feels very abnormal. It feels very wrong. Okay, so my perception of what's actually happening here I'm getting a different perception that's different, and that feels normal. That feels way off. This feels not as comfortable. So this is, to me, for my perception, my perceiving is this is the way the world should work, or this is the way it is. But also, what I've noticed, I was talking about the movie here a few minutes ago, is when my perception of the movie and its plot, the way I would have perceived it last month is very different from the way I'm perceiving it this month, because now I'm more perceiving it as the characters are interrelationships between neural networks as opposed to human beings doing character differences in society. That for some reason, the way my brain is now wired on that piece of it, I'm getting more of an impression and more of a sense of the characters being on that side of the neurons, which gives me a different perspective or a different sensation of the movie. And the other thing that's happening with it, and I look at the screen, and now when I look at the screen, even though the screen is flat, I actually do tend to process the depth of the screen, and it looks much more 3D. And when I'm looking in the world itself, I am processing a 3D image more than I did last month. So I have gained that 3D sensation. So whatever the neural network or neural networks are that are involved in that 3D, that stuff is now processing differently than it did last month. And these are things that have accumulated again and again in the last 2 weeks, and every day a little bit better, a little better. And this is another situation where it's like, I notice this, and because of that, I have a sensation. I'm getting a sensation. My consciousness on it is now newly sensitized to it than it was before. And because I'm a computer programmer and I understand some of the things that happen in computers when you have like databases and you have processors and you have the network that's going on, that all these things are tied together, and that's true with the brain too in some way, shape, or form. But there's obviously some part of the brain processing that has this thing of cognition or sensation or feeling that this is what's happening. It's pulling in all of these things, over time, over a short amount of time, and then it processes them and kind of adds the pieces together. And then at some point it stores part of it and it becomes part of the memory. And it's processing the next thing. It's kind of a continuous cycle like that. And that's what I'm looking at as being the mind's eye. And what that piece of hardware is, or software is, or where it's at, or whatever. I like I said yesterday, I think it's at the maybe about the 10th of a second level is where that piece of it actually works, because it has to deal with the saving of the data to a network. It has to do with processing it, and it has stuff going out and everything else, and coming back, and then it brings it back. But when it brings it back, it's got a waveform that kind of shifts and changes, and because that waveform that shifts and changes, it alters it, but that shift and change also interfaces with the other networks that do these other processes, and that ultimately that's what's causing it. And that's what causes the sensation, but it's not something that is 100 absolutely % there and unchanging. It's permanently changing and interfacing and interacting. And that's why you may call it a soul. And yes, it is a continuous moving soul that happens to be in the right place to have all this stuff interacting. But then when it moves out and shifts out of it, it doesn't have that interface anymore. So it still exists, that little framework still exists as it goes out, but it loses its connection to the database, and loses its connection to the thing, and so that's kind of where I'm perceiving that this is what this I is. What causes us to have consciousness, and why we also have some of a consistency in looking at consciousness being something that goes from minute to minute and hour to hour. Then you go to sleep, and then you come back, and then you wake up, and then when you're waking up, it generates a memory of its processing because of its interaction with the network. That's kind of the sense that a very, very, very deep sense I've got of what that whole thing is all about. So that's where I'm at. That's why I want to get explained. I took longer to explain that than I was really going to try to, but I also think it was much deeper than.
Mm-hmm. It was.
So now we can say, okay, Rusty, you're done.